today's Salt Lake City Council formal meeting. The City Council's return to virtual public meetings to help reduce the transmission of COVID-19 due to the rate of COVID-19 cases in the city and elsewhere. This change in meeting attendance is a precautionary measure for the safety of the public and city employees and is based on the latest reports from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. We are continuing to monitor the situation in advance of each meeting, and the council will return to a hybrid or in-person meetings when appropriate. We are truly grateful for the public's patience, but mostly important, we are glad that you're joining us today. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we're going to turn off the monitors and the audio, and turn it back on as soon as we're done. All right, welcome to the public meetings. For the public comment opportunities today, we are accepting your comments through WebEx. And for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. Before we begin moving through our agenda, I want to mention and review our rules of decorum. These are guidelines that the City Council has always had in place to help our meetings progress in an orderly, civil, efficient way. These help us move through the agenda and give everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions without feeling intimidated. In order to achieve this, our rules of decorum begin from the moment you arrive into our virtual meeting. The council respects all points of view and we welcome new insights. While giving your comments, please be respectful. Avoid yelling, profanity, or making racial slurs, obscene or defamatory remarks. And if you use profanity during your comment, your line will be muted. And if any comments reach a level of disrespect, I will ask that you be muted and you will forfeit your opportunity to address the council tonight. If you feel the need to use profanity to express your point, you're welcome to email council members or call our comment line. In addition, our staff will request for your name during the registration process. To limit disruption, your name cannot include a message or violate our rules of decorum. If your registered name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will use the chat feature to gather the information from you. Isaac Canedo from our staff is helping to moderate the meeting and will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate on any questions with your commenting registration. Staff is handling a number of tasks. Please limit messages to technical issues and minimal changes to your registration. If you would like to send any comments to the council, please feel free to and mail it to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114, or email us at council.comments@slcgov.com, or call us at 801-535-7654. We're going to move into item A4. We're going to look to approve the work session meeting minutes of Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, as well as the formal meeting minutes of Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, and the special limited formal meeting of minutes. I think this should say 2021. All of these.
Council Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Cindy Lou. They are actually intended to be 2020. We recognize that during the midst of change in the recorder's office that we missed some approvals of the 2020 early minutes.
Thanks for that explanation. It doesn't make me look as crazy, so I appreciate that. So we're going to look for the special limited formal meeting minutes of Tuesday, April 14th, 2020 as well. I'll look for a motion of these minutes.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Thanks, Councilmember Wharton. And was that Councilmember Dugan who did a second on that? Okay, we're going to roll call this. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Romano.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. That motion passes. Now we will begin our public hearings. Taylor Hill and our staff will be calling the names of those who wish to comment and muting lines. Once we open public comment, Taylor will announce 3 names at a time so that people can have some notice and be prepared to speak. When it is your turn to speak, Taylor will say your name, unmute your line, and you may begin. Please state your name and the 2-minute timer will start. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. If you're unable to finish your comment, please refer to our chat and our staff will post your comment. If you do not wish to speak, please message our staff to let them know or when the host states your name, please let us know that you are here just to listen. Our first public hearing includes a resolution authorizing the issuance of the city's sales and excise tax revenue bonds to finance the acquisition of certain library facilities from the local building authority of Salt Lake City and the potential economic impact that such library facilities have on the private sector. Let's turn it over to Lehua Weaver, the council staff policy analyst, to give a short introduction, and then we'll go to the public comment.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if her computer might have been having issues earlier. So I can do a quick, this is a refinancing essentially of existing city bonds.
That's great. I appreciate that, Jennifer. Okay, that's a great description. So we're going to move into the public comment, Taylor.
So it looks like we have one person here to speak to this item, and that will be George Chapman. George, you're now unmuted.
Okay, I'm against the bond funding list. I don't mind funding the bond, but the bond funding list is an issue. I think streets maintenance is more important than the Fisher Mansion, and you have $7 million planned for that. The mansion will be used by a fraction of those desperately needed streets that are not like old cattle trails. And we have some streets like that, but we're not repairing them. And the Pioneer Park, we already removed restrooms and poured a ton of money into it. It didn't help, so why do we keep pouring money into it? The only thing that will help the parks, including Pioneer Park, is walking police patrols with dogs to discourage drug use, abuse, and dealing. Hire more cops and return the drug dogs, and change the police manual to make it clear not to use dogs against unarmed civilians. That should be a no-brainer. Use the Pioneer Park and wood utilization money for the Fleet Block Park. You seem to have plenty of money for it. And what about the police station for substation for North Temple and State Street? These are crime magnets, and they deserve the money more than urban wood utilization, which I thought the county should be paying for, or has paid for. And what about the East Side police station you promised? So my bottom line is you should be prioritizing the projects by utilization to be fiscally responsible. More will use a street than reconstruction of the Fisher Mansion. I know it's a done deal bond refunding, but the list should be reevaluated. Those are my comments.
Thanks, George. I appreciate it, but I'm going to turn the time over to Jennifer to clarify this bond.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, there are a couple of different bond items that are either being discussed or on the agenda right now. So I just wanted to make sure and clarify for the council and the public, this particular item is refinancing existing bonds that the city has issued in the past for previous projects. The proposal that the administration sent the council, that the council discussed at their work session, that has not been set for a public hearing yet because the council is still working through that list of projects. There's also a GO bond on the agenda that deals with streets, and that bond was approved by the voters and had to be issued in chunks. So those are the kind of three bond items going on your agendas right now. This one is simply a refinance of existing bonds from previous projects that the council has already funded in the past. So not the new projects.
And Jennifer, the refinancing saves taxpayer money, right?
Correct, yes, to realize lower interest rates.
Thank you, Jennifer. And George, your comments did not go on deaf ears. I know exactly what you're speaking about, and I'm sure the other council members do as well. So duly noted. I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing.
Motion by Councilmember Dugan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Valdemoros. Is there any discussion? I think we had the discussion. Thanks to council staff, Jennifer Bruno and Cindy Gus Jensen. All those in favor? Oh, actually, I'm going to roll call it. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that motion passes. Our second public hearing is item B2 regarding an ordinance that would adopt the 2020 street lighting master plan. Now, before we go taking public comments, I'm going to turn the time over to Sam Owen, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The item before the council is potential action on an ordinance, as the chair said, that would adopt the 2020 Salt Lake City Street Lighting Master Plan. The master plan has been in the works for a number of years at this point. The last time the master plan for this service the city provides was updated was more than a decade ago, less than 2 decades ago, sometime in that window, I think 2007. So it's been a while since the plan's been updated. One focus of the 2020 Salt Lake City Street Lighting Master Plan was to collect feedback from community members and technical consultants, both locally and from out of state, to identify where in the city different lighting technologies and strategies might be employed to both recognize the unique geographical and demographic circumstances of various Salt Lake City neighborhoods. Demographic meaning, preferences of the residents in particular, as well as impact on wildlife. So the places where the city development, buildings and houses in the city, interface directly with undeveloped wilderness or wildland areas. Those areas are of particular sensitivity when it comes to lighting, and this plan creates a strategy for taking that into account, based on the needs of particular areas where lighting is to be installed or to be updated. All that to say, the plan is a big vision with an implementation strategy for accomplishing kind of these micro local street lighting solutions that hopefully work for the community members they're intended to serve. Furthermore, the plan was reviewed by the Salt Lake City Planning Commission with advice to, or motion language actually, to focus more on the relevant potential health impacts of height, color, temperature, dog's barking. I don't know if that's coming through. There's a lot of noise. Sorry. So finally, in response both to public feedback and engagement, and to that engagement from the Planning Commission, the department also prepared a technical memo on the correlation between color temperatures and health outcomes for insects, wild animals, human beings. So that's in the packet materials with this agenda item as well. Thank you, council members. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Sam. Taylor, let's start the public comment.
So it looks like we have 2 people here to speak to this item, the first of which will be Dave Ildis and then George Chapman. Dave, you're now unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Just so you know, your WebEx has been really wonky today, so I had a lot of trouble connecting. So the plan is really seriously not ready to pass. I've been raising the issue of color temperature for dark skies, health, wildlife and such, and it's fallen on utterly deaf ears from public utilities. I brought this up in the Planning Commission. They've made no changes. You had a work session. Public Utilities has made 0 changes. The plan has some great things in it, but it also really needs some updates before you should even consider passing it. And those, I've emailed you those, but one of the things it needs to do is explicitly state the dark skies principles, which are all light should have a clear purpose. Light should be directed only where needed. Light should be no brighter than necessary. Light should only be used when it's useful. Use warmer color lights when possible. There's no, your executive summary is weak and poorly written. There's no explicit goal to make Salt Lake City a dark skies city. The color temperatures are too high in the plan. Public Utilities has ignored this over and over and over again for the last 1.5 years. They have not done a good job in engaging the public despite what they claim. They have shut myself and my partner out of the process on multiple occasions, patronized us, etc. And they the maximum color temperature in residential areas needs to be 2200 K, 2700 K on the larger roadways. Davis, California does this. Health is not one of the primary principles of the plan, and it doesn't state that warmer light bulbs should be a goal of the plan. Warmer, i.e., lower color temperature bulbs. The consultants mushed their color temperature goals from what they originally had and made them higher. And
That's time.
Thanks, Dave. George.
All right, George, you are unmuted.
Okay, I agree with everything Dave said. And just a quick note, the previous public hearing did have in the packet the list of proposed items, which is why I talked about it. My understanding, the bond refunding frees up money for the list. And I understand the list is not a done deal, but I'm pushing public services tonight. And like Dave said, we should table the street lighting ordinance. It is based on 4-year-old information and technology. Things have changed markedly in this arena, and Dark Skies is not endorsing this. I checked. It appears that Rocky Mountain Power is encouraging power use with this ordinance. What happened to Salt Lake City's sustainability goals? Remember all of the complaints about lights shining into homes that required baffles and shields to stop extraneous lights? We had a lot of complaints about it. We're still getting complaints about it. You even had to promise that new lighting would have baffles. This street lighting ordinance is not ready for prime time. Dave is right. Table it and incorporate the newest technology available with lower light temperatures and smart lighting to only use power when vehicles and people are moving. This city seems to want to waste power and invite complaints. It doesn't make sense. Table the street lighting ordinance. Thanks for listening.
And that was our final comment for this item.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Dave and George. Appreciate your comments this evening. I'm going to look for a motion, council members.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public hearing and defer action to another meeting.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Wharton, a second by Councilmember Valdemoros. Is there any discussion, further discussion to this?
Councilmember Ferris.
Sorry.
Seconded it.
Did I say Valdemoros?
Yeah.
My apologies. Councilmember Ferris was the second on that motion. Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And so that motion carries. Our third public hearing is item B3 regarding budget amendment number 2 for fiscal year 2021. Before taking any public comments, I'm going to turn the time over to Ben Lutke from council staff, who will give a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 18 items in budget amendment number 2, totaling $2.3 million in proposed expenditures. Some of the items include continued funding until the end of the current fiscal year for the Downtown Ambassador pilot programs on North Temple and in the Rio Grande neighborhood. It also includes funding a new pilot program to address RV and car camping in the city, a new full-time clerk position in the recorder's office, and several follow-up items from the capital improvement program budget that the council adopted last month. The administration's proposal, the staff report, are available in today's meeting packet, and the council also has a dedicated web page for all budget information. That is available at tinyurl.com/SLC FY22 budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate you. Taylor, let's please start our first public comment.
It looks like we have 3 people here to speak to this item, the first of which will be Kiko Jones, followed by George Chapman, and then Nigel Swaby. Kiko, you're now unmuted.
Hi, my name is Kiko Jones. And as of today, the website for 300 North Pedestrian Bridge says due to the high cost of the materials, project initiation and completion dates are unknown. It also says soon, but soon is not good enough. Over the years, I have seen many people, including West High students and even bikers, climb over the stopped trains. It's very dangerous, and I hope building the pedestrian bridge would be one of the city's priorities. And we have been waiting for a long time for this, and I hope the project will get enough funding by a way of reallocating the budget. Thank you.
And next we will hear from George Chapman and then Nigel Swaby. George, you're now unmuted.
Okay, Keiko, I did not know that. It caught me by surprise. I've been pushing the over-the-rail pedestrian bridges for years, and yes, the city should prioritize it. You're absolutely right. But the other issues on the budget item, you're missing a whole bunch of points because North Temple, Rio Grande neighborhood, and as you discussed today, there are other parks and areas like Councilman Mono mentioned. People are desperate for something to mitigate the drug and crime problems because remember, the homeless are impacted by drug use, abuse, and dealers. They're the first victims. And if you're going to keep ignoring it, you're going to keep having problems. So the Downtown Ambassador program, like Anna mentioned, yeah, maybe that's what we need to do. We need to get an outside contractor. If we don't have enough cops, I think we should have more cops, but you don't seem to be able to hire enough. So we're down 97. Expand the Downtown Ambassador program to other areas because you promised more police action around the shelters and it's not being delivered. On funding for the new RV camping, car camping outreach, you don't need outreach. What you need is a place for people to park safely to avoid the drugs in the shelters. And you need a car camping area so they don't go through the other areas and neighborhoods. This is ridiculous because all that's happening is the tow companies, as you discussed last week, don't want to tow RVs or campers. So you need a parking area, you need a camping area. Please focus on that. Don't try to beat around the bush. Those are my comments.
And then finally, we will hear from Nigel Swaby. Nigel, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is Nigel Swaby, and I live in the Fair Park area. I would like to echo both Keiko and George's comments on the 300 North pedestrian project. That's something that I've been advocating for years, and if now is the time for it to get completed, I'm happy to support that. On the Downtown Ambassador program, North Temple has been a beneficiary of that program for about the last 4 months, and it has been a good program. It's helpful because it reduces pressure on the police, who, as George mentioned, were definitely short-staffed on. It puts a uniform presence in place. It's comforting for business owners and residents, as well as not being weaponized like the police. So I urge you to vote for that and to actually expand that program in other trouble spots in the city. And then finally, in regards to the car camping and motor or RV camping, that has definitely been a problem, but the pilot program that's being proposed is really only going to be a boon for the tow companies. Salt Lake City needs to enforce ticketing and the measures that we already have in place before we expend $100,000 subsidy towards the towing companies. Thank you.
And that was our final comment for this item.
Thank you, Keiko, George, and Nigel. Appreciate your comments this evening. Looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, can I take a quick moment of personal privilege?
Sure.
I know a lot of residents are also interested in an update on the pedestrian bridge. And I know that somewhat recently, we were back on track, and I thought that the Tiger funds had been secured. So if we could just ask staff to get maybe a little bit more information about this round of delays so that people can understand what that is on the website, I think that would be helpful.
Great.
I get a lot of questions about this, so thank you.
Yep, it's been a project long in the making. So
yeah.
Just want to say, got the question, and we'll follow up. And we'll also get contact information for the commenters so we can follow up with them directly.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
All right, Chris, let's have that motion that you were going to make.
I was going to move that we close the public hearing and defer action to for future council meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Wharton, second by Councilmember Ferris. Any further discussion to this item? Seeing none, I'm going to roll call this. Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes, that motion passes. We are at section C, potential action items. We're going to move on to C1, which is an ordinance that would amend the zoning map pertaining to 2 parcels located at 833 West Hoyt Place.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to remind the council, as we discussed at the last briefing, that the ambassador program on North Temple runs out of funding at the end of the month. And so if there's not a vote on that item tonight, there'll be a lapse in service for that pilot program.
Mr. Chair, I move to reconsider the vote on the last item to close the public hearing on budget amendment number 2.
Second.
Okay. A motion by Councilmember Wharton and second by Councilmember Dugan being the prevailing vote. Roll call this really quickly. Unless there's a discussion, I think it was pretty explanatory. Thanks, Ben. Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. All right,
Councilmember
Councilmember Wharton. Oh, sorry, I just considered it. Yes, Councilmember Wharton is a yes too.
Okay.
All
good.
right, let's go back to it.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public hearing on budget amendment number 2 and defer action on all items except for
A1.
A1, and I move that we approve item A1. Well, I guess we close the hearing on all items and put all items except A1 on the agenda for a future meeting, and that we move to approve item A1 this evening.
Second.
Second.
Motion. Okay, I had a couple. I think it was Councilmember Mono that beat you, Councilmember Ferris. So Councilmember Wharton's made a motion, a second by Councilmember Mono. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton, I'm not going to forget you.
Thank you. Yes.
And I am a yes, that motion passes. Thank you, Ben, for getting us back on track and making sure that North Temple doesn't have a lapse in service. We're on to section C, potential action items for item C1 regarding an ordinance that would amend the zoning map pertaining to 2 parcels located at 833 and Hoyt Place and 834 West, 200 North. I'm going to look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion and a statement that I think that with this, let's see, which one is it? With motion 1 that's shown on the motion sheet, that we will be able to address the concerns that were raised at our previous meeting and protect the historic house on 2nd North and make sure that that historic structure is preserved as a condition of this rezone. I hope that I appreciate residents who brought this to our attention. And I would indicate to them that the developer has already indicated that they would accept that contingency. And so I hope that this will allow us to move forward with a win-win situation for historic preservation and for the developer of this property. So I would move that the council adopt the ordinance subject to the administration entering into a development agreement with the applicant, which includes the following conditions: protection of the single family use and architecture of the existing structure at 834 West, 200 North.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Wharton, a second by Councilmember Ferris. Any more discussion in regards to this? Seeing none. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
I am a yes. That motion passes. We're on to item C2 regarding amending the city code pertaining to fence wall and hedge height requirements. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve this ordinance amendment to hedge, wall, and fence height.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Wharton, second by Councilmember Mono. Any discussion? Seeing none. Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
And I am a yes. That motion passes. Our last potential action item is C3 regarding a resolution that would authorize a waiver of lease fees at the Salt Lake City International Airport to facilitate the operation of an airport military service members lounge operated by the United Service Organization. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Dugan and a second by Councilmember Ferris. It's fitting that both of our council members who have served are the ones making these motions, so I appreciate that very much. Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. That motion carries. We are on to comments and questions to the mayor from the city council. Are there any questions for the mayor? Mayor, thanks for being here. As usual, you're here every time. That's so impressive. So in my 8th year, and it's never been like this. So the past 2 years have been a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, maybe make a comment and of appreciation of the mayor of today's press conference, announcing the $8 million NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, for all of those out there that would like to build affordable housing in Salt Lake City as we continue to provide solutions to the housing crisis. So thank you, Mayor, for doing that this morning and in these 2 wonderful buildings here in District 4, the Avia and the Maya. So so that the public knows, the Maya, for example, rents out to people at 40%, 60%, and 80% AMI. And the 40% AMI, folks are paying $616 a month for a very nice unit, modern, nice amenities in the building. So that the public knows the work that we do with this housing funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Valdemoros. We are now at the general comment portion of our agenda for comments about general topics and items that were not scheduled for a hearing tonight. I went over the city rules and decorum earlier. The same rules apply here. We are accepting comments through WebEx. Staff is monitoring these and just want to make sure that everybody obeys these rules. Don't want to mute you, don't want to have to cut you off short because of comments that are inappropriate. So we are going to turn it over to Taylor, who's going to announce 3 names at a time so that people can be prepared to speak. When it's your turn to speak, Taylor will say your name, unmute your line, and you may begin. Please state your name. The 2-minute timer will start. All right, Taylor, turn it over to you.
So it looks like we have about 6 people here to speak to general comment, the first of which will be John Pren, followed by Daniel Schelling, and then Eric Edelman. John, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Madam Mayor. I'm going to talk about the inland port. Now that climate chaos, meaning fires, floods, droughts, and social disruption, has come home to roost, we might want to plan how to adapt. Instead, the inland port, now under construction, will devastate Salt Lake and intensify climate chaos. A few hope to profit, and the vast majority of us and our children will suffer. I want to thank Council Chair Fowler and Mayor Mendenhall for the letter that they sent to the UEPA board. Postponement of their hundreds of millions of dollars tax grab until they tell us what the port is really all about is a real achievement. By now, we all know all too well what we're going to get from the port. And I have a long list of things that you already have heard many times, mostly about increased diesel traffic and gruesome, persistent, toxic air pollution. But there's many more downsides. And this port is not an adaptation to the climate emergency. All of these downsides are real consequences suffered by other U.S. communities that have accepted inland ports. Our situation in Salt Lake now resonates with Hong Kong. We're under the hobnail boot of totalitarian control. Our choice is the same: fight back, move out if we can, or stay and suffer. We ask the Council to keep pushing UEPA for honesty, clarity, specificity, and forthrightness, and to stop the polluting port.
And next we will hear from Daniel Schelling, followed by Eric Edelman, and then Hillary Jacobs. Daniel, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. Good evening. As a resident of Salt Lake City and a member of Save Our Foothills, I would like to thank Mayor Mendenhall, the mayor's staff, and the entire city council for the recently announced pause in trail construction in the Salt Lake City foothills until June of 2022. I'm particularly grateful to those of you in the mayor's office and on the city council who took time to look into what Save Our Foothills has identified as significant problems with the Foothills Trails Master Plan and its Phase 1 implementation. I'm now looking forward to working with the city to come up with adjustments to the Foothills Trails Plan as necessary during and after the pause. I am aware that there's some people who are unhappy with the mayor's recent announcement to pause construction on the Foothills Trails system. But I would like to remind the City Council that the Salt Lake City foothills will still be here next June and for many years to come. And this is but one reason to not rush forward on further trail construction. In addition, I would like to remind everyone listening tonight of the old adage, haste makes waste. The pause in trail construction will hopefully allow us to avoid going down this road or trail in the near future. Again, I want to thank all of you for your time and for working with the mayor, the mayor's office, and the Peanut Board on addressing issues with the Foothills Trail system and making the mayor's recently announced pause in construction possible. Thank you.
And now we will hear from Eric Edelman, followed by Hillary Jacobs, and then Malin Monek. Eric, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. I'm Eric Edelman. I'm a resident of District 7. Mayor, I wanted to express my appreciation to you and the City Council and the Public Lands Department for taking I don't view it as a pause, but I view it as performing the proper due diligence in studying the habitat and preserving the beauty of the Wasatch, and specifically the foothills surrounding Salt Lake City. I'd also like to express appreciation to Chris Wharton, Dan Dugan, and Amy Fowler for taking time to discuss with me and with others our concerns specifically with performing this work correctly. I appreciate the fact, Mayor, that you are hiring a full-time maintenance person to maintain the existing 70+ miles of existing trail that has not been mapped out extensively by the city, and I look forward to seeing the city doing that in the upcoming months. Specifically, I'd also like to express appreciation for the removal of conflict between by performing proper due diligence, design, and distinguishing between the design and due diligence process with the construction. As previously we saw in phase one, Alta Planning performed both the design and the construction. And as we saw, the construction was not performed in alignment with what was proposed as they were being paid per linear foot of trail being constructed. An independent review of phase one will also produce knowledge that will help us better understand how we may better address trail maintenance and where needed, the construction of new trails. I would like to also voice interest in posting signage on the existing 70+ miles of trails in the foothills so that the users in the city that are not familiar with the system might better understand these 70+ miles that we already have. Once again, thank you for these steps, and I look forward to seeing what we develop over the next coming year.
And now we will hear from Hillary Jacobs, followed by Maynard Minch, and then George Chapman. Hillary, you're now unmuted. Okay, we will circle back to Hillary and move on to Maynard Minch. Maynard, you're now unmuted.
Thanks. My name is Maynard Minch. I have degrees in law and economics, 35 years of experience in logistics regulation at the federal level. The air in Salt Lake Valley is causing all of us to get sick and die sooner than we otherwise would. According to a recent BYU study, the Wasatch Front's bad air shortens the lives of the most vulnerable 1/4 of its residents by 5 full years. If it were monetized, the productive man-years lost would come to several billion dollars per year. Most of this damage is caused by fine particulates, which diesel trucks emit in prodigious amounts. The city's leaders should be moving heaven and earth to reduce the amount of fine particulates in our air, but the inland port will bring an explosion of fine particulates. 20,000 additional diesel truck trips per day when it is fully built out. This will add thousands of tons of fine particulates each year to the air we breathe. A Port Authority board member admitted that his chaotic approach to port development is like designing a plane while flying it. The port's officers strike ad hoc deals with developers behind closed doors without public RFPs, competitive bidding, or formal assessments of environmental impact. It acts as though it is a law unto itself. The inland port badly needs a traffic study and an environmental impact statement and a commercial feasibility study before hundreds of millions of tax dollars are committed. Federal permits from the Surface Transportation Board, the Federal Highway Administration, and the Army Corps of Engineers are mandatory before projects like the transloading facility can go forward. Federal involvement brings with it an obligation to prepare an environmental impact statement before these port projects proceed, and it is up to this council to see that that obligation is met.
Okay, and we will go back to Hillary Jacobs, and then she will be followed by George Chapman and then Dave Ildis. Hillary, you're now unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. My computer doesn't seem to like WebEx, so thanks. So tonight I want to thank you, the City Council, for recognizing that the Trails Master Plan, as presented to you in 2020, was greatly in need of reevaluation before releasing funds for further implementation. And I would like to thank Mayor Mendenhall and her staff for extending the pause in any further construction of trails until at least June 2022, thus allowing for the initiation and completion of important scientific, cultural, and historical studies necessary to understand how to best incorporate diverse recreational activities in this fragile foothills landscape. Just 2 days ago, a friend saw a cougar near the edge of the city. Why it had ventured so near the city, only it knows, but whether it was to find water because it felt the need to move away from hoopla, or just because it was curious, its presence is a reminder to us that this extraordinary natural area is home to incredibly diverse flora and fauna. We are but visitors to this beautiful area and must keep in mind that any projects we initiate that bring more people into this natural area must be done with care, consciousness, and respect. We humans are but one rather disruptive component in the foothills ecosystem. If we are too aggressive or rambunctious in our exuberant use of this sensitive area, we will leave irreparable damage and scars. Thank you again for taking the time to study this beautiful space from top to bottom, to gain a deeper understanding of its complexities and vulnerabilities, and then thoughtfully and transparently considering ideas to plan how we can best protect it moving forward as we balance environmental protection with appropriate and equitable recreation. Thanks again as you save our foothills.
And now we will hear from George Chapman and then Dave Ildis. George, you're now unmuted.
I assume you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay. You're about to vote on a street bonds buy, the second of three bond buys, but you're limiting the bond buy, and that's wrong. Interest rates are going to go up, and there are failing streets that failed over 4 years ago, and they're missing from the list of targeted streets. Making citizens go through the CIP process for what should be basic city services is wrong. I'm asking you tonight to add $10 million to the streets bond buy, and you could do that right now and increase the number of streets targeted. This city should not wait another year or two or wait 5 years for a CIP. You're wasting your time by not funding more streets with the bond that should be $33 million, not $23 million. So every week you're going to get complaints from your constituents that you are not ensuring basic services. Add the $10 million tonight before the vote. And I want to see Salt Lake City elected leaders very publicly fight the addition of another shelter in Ballpark. Remember, the calls for service around the shelters are extremely high. Salt Lake City should be compensated by the Utah Workforce Services for the need for more promised policing around those shelters. If this city can't stop drugs in parks and homeless camps, the situation won't get better. We've talked about this. The city should upfront fight the conditional use permit application now, not at the last minute. And a reminder that if you rezone the tens of thousands of acres of the city that doesn't allow housing, that will solve the affordable housing crisis. Those are my comments.
And now we will hear from Dave Ildis. Dave, you're now unmuted.
Hi, this is Dave Viltus. I am commenting today on the 100 South reconstruction from 900 East to University Street. The project is moving forward. The Transportation Division is breaking the Complete Streets law. They are not putting in bike lanes as per the law. Their reasoning for not doing this, they did have the first ever Complete Streets meeting in 12 years of the ordinance. Their reasoning is not valid. They could have done a road diet here, which is actually safer for emergency vehicles to the U of U. And with the talk we've had from other commenters tonight about the air and the climate, to give up a street solely to cars and make it unsafe for A, the neighborhood, and B, for cyclists is really not in lines with Salt Lake City's sustainable goals and getting to being carbon neutral. It's a finer point in how they broke the law, but they broke it both in the spirit and the intent and the letter of the law. And it sets a really bad precedent for future streets. And I would hope the mayor would really seriously look at this. It's so far, I've made almost no headway except getting 10-foot lanes agreed to by transportation, but that still isn't bike lanes. And then, thank you. And then switching gears on the Foothills Trails plan, please do reopen the legacy trails that had less conflict, less erosion, and will actually be usable in the winter time, whereas the new trails that have been built will be unusable in the winter because of snow drifts and mud. Thank you.
And that was our final comment this evening.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you for the comments, everyone, this evening. This brings us to new business of our agenda item, which is E1, a resolution that would support Salt Lake City hosting the National League of Cities conference in 2025. I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of the resolution welcoming the National League of Cities conference to Salt Lake City 2025.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Wharton, and for making the motion. I believe that was Councilmember Ferris that seconded that motion. Is there any discussion in regards to this? Seeing none, looking for a roll call here. Councilmember Ferris?
Yes.
Councilmember Mono?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That motion passes. On to items F1, which is unfinished business of our agenda, which is a resolution for general obligation bonds series 2021, which is the street reconstruction. This is the second of the 3 bonds that we discussed today. I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the resolution for the general obligation bond series 2021 for street reconstruction.
Second. Do we have to say anything about the money, or is that just all we need to say?
That's it. Just talking about the street bond. So motion by Councilmember Wharton and a second by Councilmember Dugan. Any discussion in regards to this motion? Seeing none, roll call this. Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros?
Yes.
Councilmember Mono?
Yes.
Councilmember Ferris?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. That motion carries. We are on to the consent agenda of our portion of our agenda. I've got a quick question. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, staff, the consent agenda would be everything but item number 9. As I look through it.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm just confirming that. Yes, that's right. Thank you.
So that's what I'm looking for, is a motion to approve the consent agenda except for item number 9.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Dugan, second by Councilmember Valdemoros. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're going to roll call this. Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. This concludes our formal city council meeting. And now our formal council meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.
Good night.
Good night.